Okay, and I'm about to remove this front cam here. These are going to be 10 millimeters and these are 8s. And I'm just going to go ahead and get these 8 millimeters first, and then I will work on getting these. Now when you take these out, you also have to take out this back side to pop this whole thing out. Now over here you don't have to do that, you just got an 8 and you got the two 10s and it frees that side up. But I'm going to take these out in this this center first. Okay, I've got the bolts out and removed all the little holders and numbered them as to where they go, so I put them right back to where they go, and this cam is ready to come out at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and get that out of there and take a closer look at it. Okay, so I took that front camshaft there to the machine shop, and they're going to put another pin in there for me, and we're just going to put this thing back together and see what happens. Now it could be that it doesn't work out, but we're going to try it and put some new seals on here and just throw it back together and see how this thing is going to do. So really nothing more we can do at this point. Like I said, I thought I was going to just be taking the head off and possibly replacing that, but I think that the head's good. I've checked it for straightness and there's absolutely no wobble with the cams, and I checked it with a straight edge and it looks to be just as straight as can be. So I'm hoping that them running it low on oil didn't damage it enough, and that maybe we can get this thing back up to running again. So I'll follow up when I get a little farther along. Okay, so I'd taken this camshaft to the machine shop and had them put another pin in here and clean that up a little bit, and so I'm just putting this cam back in. I've also put a liberal amount of assembly lube in these places where the journals go, and I'll be doing the same thing on the caps. We'll put some more lube on there, and I'm just getting ready to replace all of the caps and go ahead and put a little Loctite and get those torqued back down. So we're just going to go ahead and do that at this point. Okay, I'm just getting ready to torque these. We're going to work from the center, going here, 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 center out, and we're going to go 105 inch-pounds on these small ones. I'm going to go 240 on these big ones, but I'm going to do all of the small ones here, working from the center out in a zigzag pattern first. Okay, with our cams retorqued, we're getting ready to put our camshaft new seals on here, and I'm going to be loading this up with some assembly lube as well before I go to slide it in. Sometimes I've used a little piece of pipe, but a lot of times I just get like a little block of wood and just peck these things in here. Sometimes you can just push them in by hand, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, and we've got both of our new camshaft seals in there. I was able just to push them in by hand. So now we're going to go ahead and get our valve cover back on at this point. So we're going 96 inch-pounds here on these valve cover bolts. I've just tightened the cam sensor here, so it does not have to be very tight. Didn't even torque that. Okay, now we're just getting ready to put this back part of this timing cover back in here, and I've also taken degreaser and cleaned all these components up really well before sticking them back in here. Okay, so we got our timing cover bolts. Now we're going to put a little bit of medium Loctite on each of these. Alright, and I just torqued those to 96 inch. It's really not that critical, just snug them up. Okay, I've just replaced the 13 millimeter bolt on the tensioner first. I haven't tightened it, I just got it on there and hand tightened it. Okay, and we're just torquing the idler pulley here, and we're going to go 45 foot-pounds on that. Okay, I'm putting this rear sprocket on. I'm getting ready to put the bolt. I've got Loctite. Also, forgot to mention, put Loctite on your others as well. I just double checked. It's actually only 50 inch-pounds on this timing cover bolts. I went 96. It didn't seem to hurt them any, but per the specs, it called for 50 inch-pounds. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this. I'm just going to get them hand tightened, and I'll get the front one on, and then we'll go ahead and torque these. Getting ready to retorque the cam sprockets to 85 foot-pounds, and just like I removed it, I've got a ratchet with the 8mm positioned on that right there. That's underneath there. There's a little 8mm screw that holds that timing cover. I position my ratchet on that, get it nice and straight, and I'll hold that with one hand, making sure that it's on there secure, and that's going to push this around to put pressure against that, and I'll be able to torque it that way. So ideally, having a tool to hold these is best, but this is just a way to improvise if you don't have the tool. And just to show you again, I'm just holding this little ratchet nice and straight while going against it. It's pressing against that, keeping pressure, and I'm able to easily get the 85 foot-pounds. Okay, and just one thing I would note, if you're going to use this method like I did, using the extension to hold against that, make absolutely sure that you keep that nice and straight, otherwise it won't work. Okay, I've just come down here with some brake cleaner and I've cleaned this up really well. You'll want to make sure you do that so you can see your timing marks and stuff really good. You can see right there where I'm pointing my finger, that little arrow, that is your timing mark, and then this white spot right here on this crank gear. Now right now would be also a good time to pull this off and do the crank seal if it had not been done. Those things are really bad to leak, and for that you need a puller like this, and we have to get some bolts that fit these three right here and pull that off of there. I'm not going to do it at this point because I don't know how the engine's going to hold up. Like I said, it had gotten low on oil. I don't know if it's going to be good. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get my two 13mm in through this housing here, and I believe I'm going to put a little bit of sealant on those as well, because it goes through that the oil pump part there, and I want to make sure I don't have any leaks, so I'm going to go ahead and do that at this point. Okay, now just tighten these two to 245 inch-pounds. I didn't actually look up the specs on it. They wasn't handy, but 245 inch-pounds will be good. Okay, we're working on the belt now. You want to get it on the crank gear first. You actually have to push it, fold it in like so with both hands, and push it in under that lip. Just put the crank bolt back in, and I've also used a nut. You can use some washers or whatever you have just as a spacer, and I've put it in there so I can turn this, and I've kind of got it sort of lined up, but not a lot because it's going to move around. So I've got it about right there, a little bit before that notch, and now I'm just going to work on routing it around the water pump. And then also, before I go to putting it on these cam sprockets, I'm going to have to get these into position because these marks have to line up with each other. And per the manual, trying to remember, it's been a while since I've done this, but one of these has to go a little bit above or below the other, and I can't remember which. I think it's this one here. You need to have it slightly below the other so when you pull the tension up, but I'll research that here in a minute. And so we're going to get these halfway lined up. We got the crank sprocket halfway lined up. I'm going to route it around the water pump, and then we're going to come around this and get it onto our cam sprockets. And I said I've done a lot of these, and they're still not real easy to get when you got the dual overhead cam. So if it takes you 20 times or whatever, you know, you just have to keep at it till you get it. I had one that, you know, it probably took me 20 times to get it right. So, you know, just had to keep after it until I got it just right. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and get to routing this now. Okay, so if you look down at your gear sprocket down here, what they like is for the trailing edge of the spline on that gear to line up with the center line of your mark on the engine there. So if you come down here, you'll look at it and you'll see that it may look like it's slightly off, but what they want is the trailing edge of that spline on that gear there to line up with the center line of that arrow. And if you come up here, of course we're going to have the sprockets, the arrows pointing up, and we also have to get our notches that you can see here and here. We got to get those directly in line with each other, and as you can tell, they're not directly in line. So this is a trial and error. We need to you know, take it off and redo it, so because we got to get it just right. Now another thing that I use, sometimes these belts are really tight and I will pull up, once I get everything routed, I'll pull up here to get it on the tensioner. But also what I'll do is use my 18mm, and I can get it on here, and as I'm pulling up down there with the other hand, I will pull on this in that direction, and that will pull up some extra slack that I couldn't really pull up by hand, and been able to get on some of the tightest belts that way. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do here, because these things will move on you when you take this belt loose, I'm going to try to hold this one, and I'm going to get over here and I'm going to adjust this one and see if I can't get it in line, because I've got the bottom down there looking pretty good. I'm liking this over here, but I've got to get this one over here in line. So I'm going to go ahead and just try to take this side loose. I'm going to get it off the tensioner, take this side loose, and adjust this rear sprocket slightly. Okay, so I did what I said. I held this one. I actually had to take another wrench and move this side. Sometimes you need like 3 hands, it seems like, but I was able to pull this back over enough, and I've gotten those in line, and I've got the bottom down there on the trailing edge of that spline and centered up, looking nice. So we're not home free yet. I still haven't set the tensioner and rotated. Now sometimes when you get the tension, you go to rotating, it'll move this, and you may have to take it off and redo it again. So we're gonna go ahead and set the tension and tighten that 13 there, and then we'll go ahead and rotate this thing a few times and see what we're looking at. Okay, one of the more difficult things is going to be adjusting this tension, and I use a little small 1/4" drive ratchet, and I stick that into that square notch. And I also use another small one with a 13mm to tighten the bolt. Now what I do is tighten it, not completely tight, but tighten it enough so it's not going to slip and that you're still able to move it. And then I use my small 1/4" drive, and what you have to do is align this notch, and it's going to be really hard for me to explain this to you. Let me see if I can even get my... But you're going to get down here with your mirror, and you have to check this notch down here, and it has to align with the spring that's on this top here. if that makes any sense. The best thing to do is probably just Google on the alignment mark on a tensioner, because basically there's a little notch on this thing as it rotates around, and it needs to line up with a specific notch on that spring. And you can kind of see where the ratchet is. Well, that's where the square part is. It's about I would say at 3 o'clock, I guess you could say. That's about the approximate position of this by the time I got that notch lined up. I'm sorry I can't get in there with a camera to show it. I would definitely recommend Googling the alignment, and like I said, you'll have to get yourself a mirror and get down in there and look as you rotate that, because it needs to be just right to have that tension set properly. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to tighten that 13 millimeter now, and we're also going to have to double check and make sure that it didn't move, but we're going to go ahead and torque that to 240 inch-pounds now.